No one expected a farmer to put up a fight. But there he was, standing firm at the edge of his field, jaw clenched, hands blackened from the earth he tilled, his eyes focused like a hawk surveying the land. Late one afternoon, when the sun hung low in the sky, a group of marauders approached from the shadows of the forest, their laughter mingling with the rustling leaves. They had every intention of plundering the farmer's hard-earned crops. As they drew closer, the mischievous glint in their eyes promised havoc, their twisted sense of camaraderie echoing in the stillness of the air. It was a scene all too familiar, a rich farm, vulnerable and ripe for the taking. But what they hadn't counted on was the fierce spirit of the man who worked that very soil. This farmer wasn't just a man of the land. He was the embodiment of resilience. Each seed he sowed, each weed he pulled, each drop of sweat that rolled down his brow spoke of a lifetime of labor, care, and undying devotion to his family. Just weeks before, his son had returned from the city, eager for the simple peace of rural life, carrying dreams of a bountiful harvest. But now, under the gaze of marauders, those dreams felt fragile. The marauders sneered, displaying an abundance of bravado. Their leader barked, a hulking figure with a scar slicing through his brow. A farmer. But the farmer stood tall, his heart pounding in his chest like a war drum. Beneath that calm exterior, layers of unyielding fire smoldered. He was a man who knew fear and felt its icy fingers grasp at his resolve, yet he also understood something deeper. This land was his, not just a patch of dirt, but a piece of his very being. The leader waved his hand dismissively, the group snickering behind him, each laugh a dagger aimed at the farmer's courage. "We can make this easier for you," he offered, his words dripping with mockery. But the farmer, with sweat glistening on his brow as the sun began to dip behind the horizon, took a step forward. He challenged, his voice steady as the wind whispered through the grain. That slow, tense silence wrapped around them, a moment suspended in time. The air crackled with an electric energy, filled with the bitter taste of impending conflict. The marauders, now fidgeting, began to exchange glances, unsure of the unusual spectacle before them. "Maybe you don't understand what we do to those who stand in our way," another marauder shouted, but even he lacked the confidence he had moments before. There was something about the farmer's stance, a strength that seemed to defy logic, wrapping around him like an ancient shield. "Maybe you don't understand what I'm prepared to protect," the farmer shot back. It was a risk, a gamble that staked everything he held dear against the marauder's arrogance. And then, as if awakening a sleeping giant, the farmer turned and beckoned to the old barn behind him. The marauders scoffed, their laughter rising again. But suddenly, that sound was interrupted by the creaking swing of barn doors that had been closed far too long. He emerged, not just a solitary figure, but flanked by ghostly shapes silhouetted in the fading light, makeshift tools now weapons of war. The farmer held a pitchfork in his right hand and an old rusted shovel in his left, his eyes fierce and unyielding. The old barn, so woven into the fabric of the farmer's life, stood witness to decades of toil and now to this brave standoff. The marauders froze for a moment, caught off guard by the sight. They had thought a mere farmer defenseless, naive, and unprepared. Now a statement rang clear. Underestimating a man defending his home had just become a grave mistake. The leader shouted, breaking the trance. With a swift motion, he signaled his band forward. They charged, wild and reckless, propelled by a sense of control that soon turned to chaos. The farmer stood his ground, the very embodiment of raw tenacity. As the attackers closed in, the pitchfork glimmered like lightning against the last rays of sun. He swung it forward, catching one marauder off guard, sending him stumbling back. The barn echoed with the clash of fists and the shouts of disbelief. A battle erupted, turning the serene landscape into a scene of unpredictable fury. Every muscle in the farmer's body ached with the strain of doing more than just fighting for survival. He was fighting for his family, for the dreams woven into every inch of this land. He thought of his son, of the laughter they shared during harvest time, of the meals that had been shared at dusk on that very porch. With every strike, he saw visions of the life he had built, of the flowers his wife had planted near the fence, vibrant against the backdrop of the field. The Marauders underestimated not just his strength but the deeper motivations that fueled him. And in that moment, they realized they weren't fighting a farmer, but an unwavering spirit. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows, the conflict seemed endless. The air was thick with grit and the haunting sounds of struggle filled the space, shattering the nonsensical laughter that once filled the air. In a flash, the farmer's shovel arcing through the air found its mark, clattering against a marauder's knee, sending him crashing to the ground with a howl of pain. Momentum began to shift. The marauders, once so brazen, began to falter. Confusion spread through their ranks. They had expected an easy win, a quick takedown. Yet the farmer was no mere obstacle. He was a storm unleashed. Seeing his comrades in disarray, the leader roared in frustration, pushing forward again, a wild look in his eyes. But the farmer stood resolute, muscles straining, determination growing stronger with every swing of his shovel, each thrust of the pitchfork a testament to his will. He yelled, the echoes of his voice reverberating through the stillness that attempted to reclaim the evening. And in that moment, he understood the raw truth of his existence. The land did not just sustain him, it fought with him. Desperation clawed at the marauders. They were now caught in their own chaotic mess, their unity disintegrating under the might of fury. Bolting back, they scrambled into the forest, empty promises of retribution trailing behind them. As silence reclaimed the field, the farmer stood poised, breathing heavily, surveying the damage. Adrenaline ebbed, leaving a sense of shock in its wake. But he was alive, his spirit unbroken. Then his son emerged from the barn, a youthful figure, eyes wide in disbelief. He shouted, rushing forward, amazement sparkling in his gaze. "You did it!" The farmer dropped his shovel. Exhausted but proud, he brushed his hand against his cheek, wiping dirt and sweat, a badge of honor now. "Fought together," he replied, pulling his son into a fierce embrace. In that quiet moment, the sound of their breaths mingling with the rustling leaves, something settled between them. The recognition that life would always present challenges. But it was grit and courage, the spirit of a farmer that made a stand. And in the end, it wasn't just about defending crops or land. It was a testament to the bonds of family, the legacy that grew within the soil, a defiance against all that sought to upend it. So as the sun surrendered to twilight, casting a golden glow over the outworn earth, the farmer vowed that he would always stand. No marauder, no shadow would take what was his without a fight. The land might have been tilled with labor, but it was rooted in love, a love powerful enough to rise against any storm. He never thought it would come to this. Standing at the edge of his once peaceful field, a patch of earth he had toiled over for years, the farmer squinted into the distance. The sun hung low, flickering through the trees like a warning sign, casting ominous shadows over the land that had given him life. And there, crossing the horizon, was a group of figures, moving like dark clouds gathering for a storm. Marauders. The word struck him with a sharp pang of fear, an electric chill spreading through his body. They were notorious in the region, an unruly band of thieves who roamed the countryside looking for vulnerable targets to plunder. To them, his farmland was just another easy score, a bounty ripe for the taking. And really, wouldn't it be? The green fields were lush this season, the crops swaying under the gentle breeze, shimmering like gold under the setting sun. They must have salivated at the thought of the riches waiting to be harvested, riches that came from his sweat and sacrifice. As they approached, laughter echoed off the trees, a reckless sound that sent shivers down his spine. The marauders were confident, full of bravado, gleaming with the arrogance of a group that thought they were untouchable. Little did they know that the man they faced was more than a mere farmer. He was a guardian of his home, a lion ready to protect his pride. The leader yelled, a hulking figure with a scar that sliced across his brow, the look of a man who relished intimidation. "Why don't you save us the trouble and just hand it over?" His voice, thick with mockery, rippled through the air, engulfing the farmer in a cloud of doubt. But deep inside, the farmer felt something shift, a spark ignited by the very injustice of the threat. The land whispered to him, reminding him of every early morning, every tending hand that had nurtured these crops. He took a breath, the air thick with determination. "Not a chance," he replied, his voice steady despite the chaos brewing in his heart. It surprised even him, that calmness. But there was a fire he'd felt kindled within him, fueled by love and protection. The Marauders paused, confusion flashing across their faces. They weren't expecting resistance. They were used to fear, to compliance. The leader barked, narrowing his eyes as if challenging the very essence of the farmer's spirit. "You'll have to get through me first," the farmer said boldly, stepping forward, his back straight, his hands clenched by his sides as if prepared to wield the very earth beneath him as a weapon. In that moment he transformed, no longer merely a cultivator of crops but a defender of values, a warrior fueled by resilience. Laughter bubbled up again from the Marauders, but now it felt strained, suffused with doubt. Just a farmer, they thought. He had to be no threat. But what made them underestimate him was a blend of audacity and ignorance. They didn't realize the heart of a man who had coaxed life from barren soil, whose hands were calloused but whose spirit was unwavering. The sun dipped, casting shadows that danced menacingly along the ground. Suddenly, the Marauders surged forward, propelled by reckless abandon, the thirst for more than just food, a craving for power and dominance. The leader led the charge, and for a moment, time slowed. They lunged toward him, wild and unrefined, a tide of chaos breaking against the solitary figure. The farmer knew he had to act fast. In one swift motion, he grabbed the pitchfork leaning against the fence, a tool meant for harvest turned into a weapon of defense. The wood felt familiar in his hands with the weight of countless seasons, and yet it now held the urgency of unwavering resolve. The first Marauder reached him, swinging wildly with a crude blade. But the farmer was ready. With a calculated thrust, he struck back, his pitchfork landing squarely, sending the attacker stumbling backward. Gasps erupted from the Marauders. This was not the encounter they had envisioned. One by one, they hesitated, their bravado faltering as they witnessed a farmer defy their expectations. It became a dance of survival, a primal fight that transcended the chaos, forged by adrenaline and the primal instinct to protect. And then the realization washed over the Marauders. This farmer wasn't fighting just for himself. He was fighting for his legacy, for the memories engraved into that land. The laughter that had once echoed through the field turned to frantic yells as the onslaught continued. Momentum shifted. With every thrust of the pitchfork, every swing of a shovel he had grabbed on the fly, fear soured their bravado. Another Marauder found his way to the ground, tripped by the very dirt he sought to plunder. The farmer knew he couldn't stop. This was a moment of truth, a defining clash not just between men, but between desperation and defiance. He shouted, spitting the words like bullets. With every call, he invoked the spirits of the crops that fed his family, the sweat on his brow from every long day of labor. The very soil beneath his feet seemed to thrum with energy, as if the earth itself backed him in the stand. The leader, his fury rising, charged forward again but lost his footing on the uneven ground, grabbing at the pitchfork as he stumbled. In that split second, the farmer tapped into everything that had brought him here: able hands, strength of heart, and a will forged by years of dedication. He pushed forward, the pitchfork a spear meant to protect, blocking the Marauder's wild swing. It felt surreal, the landscape around them. The sun, now a bright ember at the horizon, illuminated the fray, painting a picture of chaos intertwined with courage, a testament to the resilience that resides in every soul when faced with the specter of loss. And just as hope seemed to cling to the farmer, the leader, rising, unleashed an almost primal roar, rallying the remaining Marauders. With defeat looming, they flung themselves forward. For a moment, it seemed the tide might turn, desperation on their side. But the farmer stood firm, aware that failure was not an option. Parents often teach their children about the great virtues of life: kindness, patience. But here he learned the most sacred lesson of all: courage. It became palpable, driving him, coursing through his veins. He swung the shovel backward, turning swiftly to catch another Marauder. A sound echoed sharply in the twilight as they tumbled down. The band soon fragmented, their formation slipping from chaotic energy to panicked disarray. They had initially thought the farmer would run, but they now faced an unyielding barrier. He would hold his ground, come what may. Moments stretched into eternity. The Marauders, realizing their dreams of a quick score were slipping through their fingers beneath the weight of resistance, began to retreat. "Fall back." The leader's voice, once booming, now trembled under the strain of defeat. And just like that, as dawn broke, they turned away, fear pulsating through their ranks like a deadly poison, now losing confidence in their grip on power. The farmer stood tall, the remnants of the battle still swirling in the air around him. He had fought not just to protect his crops, but to safeguard the heart of his home. Breathless and weary, he watched them disappear into the shadows, their figures vanishing as the sunlight surged across the field. Every inch of this land pulsed with newfound life, resonating with the echoes of their defiance, triumph coursing through his veins. As he took a moment to absorb what had happened, it struck him. The irony. Those Marauders had expected a farmer to fold under pressure, to yield. Instead, he'd taken a stand, defending not just his land but also the dreams that lived and breathed within it. And what they'd come for now lay unharvested, untouched, every stalk standing tall as a beacon of resilience. The sun now bathed his land in brilliant golds and greens, a canvas that carried the marks of struggle and strength. He sank to his knees, the earth cool against his hands, overwhelmed by the choices made in the name of courage. His heart raced as he stood again on unsteady legs, glancing back toward the horizon. Home was still there, still vibrant, the crops swaying as a promise of a new beginning. He knew he would tell his son of this day, of the moment he discovered that strength isn't just physical, it bubbles up from the very essence of love, and for that alone he would fight until his last breath. Each step now felt lighter, the weight of victory settling upon his shoulders. As laughter from the nearby trees filled the air, he moved toward the barn, the space that held years of memories and moments that defined him. Home wasn't just where the heart was, it was what the heart fought for. And so, with the sun on his back and the rich scent of the earth surrounding him, the farmer turned his gaze toward the horizon. Here he belonged, where every stitch of sweat, every uneasy moment had stitched together the fabric of a warrior. "Let them come," he murmured to himself, resolve strengthening with each passing day. The sun hung low over the horizon, casting a golden hue across the sprawling fields that stretched as far as the eye could see. It was a quiet afternoon in the countryside, but in the dense wood that bordered the farmer's land, shadows flickered ominously, darting toward the peacefulness of his farm. A rustle in the branches caught his ear. He turned, eyebrows furrowing, instinct whispering that something was amiss. Just then, a group of Marauders emerged, their laughter sharp and cruel, echoing off the trees like a death knell. Clad in ragged clothes, weapons glinting menacingly, their confidence radiated a darkness that threatened to obscure everything he cherished. "Look at this place," the roughest among them sneered, his scarred face twisted into a grin. "Easy pickings, harvesting a field like this." The farmer's pulse quickened, but fear was met with something stronger, a fierce protectiveness ignited within him. This land was more than dirt and crops. It held years of toil, love, and family. He had poured his heart into it, each seed sown a promise of nourishment, each blade of grass a reminder of hope. He shouted, voice steady despite the thundering of his heart. The Marauders exchanged glances, surprised at the audacity of this lone man standing in their way. They were used to intimidation, to seeing fear in the eyes of their victims. Instead, here he was, defiance pouring from him like a river. The leader, a brute of a man with wild eyes, stepped forward, the smile still curling on his lips. He taunted, brandishing his weapon like a plaything. For a heartbeat, the tension simmered, filling the air like a loaded gun. The farmer felt the weight of every choice he had made to protect his family and land. "You'll have to get through me first," he replied, words slicing through the stillness that had enveloped them. Laughter erupted from the group, but this time it rang hollow. They had come expecting an easy conquest, not a showdown. They charged forward, confident that brute strength would crush resistance. But as they surged, something deep inside the farmer stirred a primal urge to defend, to protect what mattered most. With swift movements, he grabbed the pitchfork leaning beside him, its sturdy wood warm from the sun. In that moment, it transformed from a simple farming tool into a weapon of defiance. The first Marauder lunged at him, swinging a crude club. The farmer sidestepped, thrusting the pitchfork forward with all the strength he could muster. It struck true, sending the marauder sprawling backward, surprise and pain etched on his face. Gasps rippled through the band. For a moment they hesitated, uncertainty tumbling into the chaos. Fear began to weave its way into their laughter, and they looked to their leader, who, now roaring with anger, charged again. The farmer met his advance with resolve, every muscle in his body braced for the fight of his life. This was not just a battle for survival, it was a reckoning. Swinging the pitchfork, he felt the adrenaline surge, each thrust fueled by memories of his family gathered around the dinner table, of laughter echoing in the fields as they harvested together. This land was their legacy, woven into the fabric of their being. The clash of metal against wood was jarring, a harsh symphony underscoring their struggle. In that moment of chaos, the marauders scattered, each frantically trying to regroup but finding nothing but the unyielding spirit of the farmer. The fight had transformed. It was no longer a mere physical confrontation. It was a manifestation of resolve, of love. As the leader raged forward, the farmer ducked, sweeping his leg out in a fluid motion that caught the marauder off guard. Momentum crashed into him like a wave, and he went down with a thud. The shock on his face mirrored what the others were feeling, realization dawning that their numbers meant little against the fierce love of a protector. The ground was now a battleground painted with desperation and courage. With each swing of the pitchfork, the farmer felt the weight of every injustice he had ever witnessed. The mistreatment of those deemed weak, the callousness of the world outside his fields pushed him forward. He was not just fighting for his crops, he was fighting for every story, every life connected to this land. The marauders regrouped, but their bravado had crumbled. They hadn't expected resistance or the force of will that surged through the farmer. He knew he was outnumbered, but in that moment he felt the power of a history that bound him to this ground, and it wrapped around him like armor. He shouted amidst the fray, "This is not your land." His voice cut through the chaos, a beacon of fierce clarity igniting those around him with purpose. The marauders, once a daunting presence, faltered, uncertainty replacing their aggression. The leader, now on the ground, grappling to find his footing, hissed at his remaining companions, "Don't just stand there." But as they advanced again, hearts racing with fear cloaked in anger, the farmer found his strength in those who had come before him, generations of hard workers, dreamers and guardians who had faced oppression and fought back. He pushed forward, and with a skillful maneuver, the pitchfork pinned another marauder to the ground. The farmer roared, voice echoing through the field, the sun setting in a blazing glory behind him. The sight was almost mythical, the farmer standing as the embodiment of resilience, and for a moment silence fell. It was a moment that seemed to stretch, the weight of it pressing against the air. The marauders exchanged glances. Could this be happening? They had come for an easy victory, expecting to stroll away with riches and glory. But here they stood, battered and bewildered, pitted against a man whose spirit refused to yield. The fight that had erupted around them held echoes of ancient stories, tales of battles fought not just with swords but with the heart. The farmer, breath ragged but unwavering, felt it too. A history of fight, of love, of protection surged through him. His purpose was clear, and it energized every inch of his being. As the shadows lengthened around them, the leader, now bruised and battered, realized the tide had turned irreversibly. The spirit of defiance stood against him like an unyielding wall, unwavering and resolute. With a final surge of adrenaline, he drew back, signaling a retreat. He shouted, but the fear began to creep into his voice, eroding the bravado that had once filled the air. The marauders scattered, scrambling back through the trees like frightened animals. As they fled, the farmer stood tall, chest heaving, breathless with triumph. The air rang with the echoes of their departure, the silence that followed stretching like a tangible presence. The sun dipped lower, painting the landscape in shades of crimson and gold, illuminating the bruised but unbroken figure of the farmer amidst the battlefield. His heart raced, pride swelling inside him. In the throes of chaos, he had fought for something far greater than crops. He had fought for dignity and belonging, for the honor of generations that would come after him. Slowly, he lowered his pitchfork, the weight of it grounding him once more in the reality of his land. He could hear the faint rustle of leaves coming now in the wake of the storm. The field lay before him, untouched and alive, and the very earth seemed to breathe in relief. As he surveyed the land, a deep sense of gratitude washed over him. In the distance, he saw his son running toward him, a wild expression of concern and pride etched across his young face. "Dad," he shouted, panting as he approached. The farmer knelt to embrace the boy, holding him close, reassuring both of them that it was over, that they had survived. "It's all right, son," he whispered, the warmth of their bond dispelling the remnants of fear. The boy looked at him wide-eyed, processing the reality of the battle that had just unfolded. He exclaimed, awe dripping from every word. The farmer smiled at him, pride blooming in his chest like the flowers that lined the fields in spring. As the stars began to twinkle in the indigo sky, the farmer and his son stood together in silence, a shared understanding unfolding between them. They watched the shadows that had once loomed over their land slowly retreat, leaving nothing but the echo of courage in its wake. "Remember this moment," the farmer said softly, still feeling the adrenaline course through him. And in that quiet reassurance, the farmer shifted from fear to hope. Together, they turned toward the house on the horizon, their home a sanctuary built not just of timber and stone, but of dreams, love, and an unyielding spirit that refused to kneel. The land they stood on was theirs, and they would nurture it fiercely, forever resilient against the storms that dared intrude upon their lives. As the moon ascended, casting a silver glow over the fields, the farmer knew they were safe for now. The Marauders had underestimated him, thinking he was no more than a humble farmer. But he had revealed himself as something far greater, a guardian, a fighter, an unwavering protector of all that truly mattered. And deep inside, he understood that courage isn't merely the absence of fear. It is the will to face it head-on, to stand tall against the tide and fight for a future filled with hope. In that moment, as the night wrapped the land in a gentle embrace, he knew they would prevail through every challenge, every marauder, every storm. This land, with its rich soil and vibrant life, was theirs to safeguard, carved from sweat and resilience, held together by love. The sun was setting, painting the sky with hues of orange and purple, when the peace of the quiet countryside was shattered. At the far edge of a wheat field, a farmer toiled away, sweat drenching his brow. Yet, as he wiped his forehead and leaned on his trusty plow, a strange noise caught his attention, a low rumble that morphed into cruel laughter. He squinted into the shadows cast by the towering trees, and then, emerging from the thicket, came a band of marauders. Their ragged clothes and wild eyes glinted ominously in the fading light, primal energy radiating off them like waves of heat from a fire. They had a reputation, a dangerous one. They were thieves, known for raiding farms like his, taking what they wanted without a second thought. The farmer's heart raced as he realized their intentions. His land, his crops, everything he had worked so hard for, was in imminent danger. For a heartbeat, he felt fear creep into his chest like a slow poison. But alongside it surged something more powerful, a fierce protectiveness, a flame ignited by years of labor and dreams woven into the very roots of the earth he tilled. The leader of the band shouted, swaggering forward. His sneer was a cruel twist against the soft hues of twilight. "We're not here for a friendly chat." The farmer took a step forward, heart pounding, every fiber of his being screaming at him to defend what was rightfully his. He shouted back, voice steady, echoing across the stillness of the field. The marauders paused, surprise flickering across their faces. They were used to cowering farmers who yielded under pressure. But here stood a man who embodied defiance, every sunburnt hand. Every line etched into his skin was a testament to his resolve. The leader replied, laughter edging into his voice again. "What do you plan to do?" The farmer felt a rush of anger, but he kept his composure. He declared, gripping the handle of his pitchfork, the familiar wood feeling reassuring. He'd used it countless times during harvests, feeling the life coursing through the earth, and it was time to show that strength. The marauders exchanged quick glances, the bravado simmering as they saw something solid in their prey, a determination that rekindled the fire in the farmer's heart. The leader yelled, charging forward with his crew close behind. The The farmer stood firm, the pitchfork held tightly as he anticipated their advance. When the first marauder lunged, swinging a crude blade, he sidestepped, thrusting his pitchfork not just with strength but with purpose. It struck true, catching the attacker off guard and sending him stumbling back with a yelp of shock. Gasps bounced among the marauders. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. Confusion spread through their ranks, eyes darting from one another to the farmer. Somewhere in that chaos, the adrenaline surged through the farmer, igniting a primal urge to defend not just his crops but his very existence. With a fierce resolve, he swung the pitchfork again, the arc smooth and deliberate. Another marauder rushed in, but the farmer sidestepped once more, using the sheer weight of his years of labor to catapult another attack, sending that one tumbling as well. It was exhilarating. He felt the ground beneath him pulse with life, as if the very earth was urging him forward. The marauders, who had charged in with confidence, found themselves scrambling. "Get him!" The leader bellowed, rage spilling from his lips, but their confidence began to evaporate, replaced with uncertainty. The farmer lifted his arms, sweat glistening against the backdrop of a crimson sky. He shouted, voice echoing across the land, stronger than the clattering of weapons. As if struck by a bolt of realization, the marauders hesitated. Their leader's furious barks turned to nervous murmurs. An unexpected shift echoed through the air, a realization that they weren't fighting just a farmer. They were grappling with a force of nature. The leader sneered, but his veneer of bravado cracked ever so slightly as he gauged the farmer's resolve. The farmer, aware he stood against multiple foes, felt his energy surge. The truth was, he was never intended to fight alone. Every day, he worked alongside a community of neighbors who believed in protecting one another. With the memories of laughter, shared dinners, and long nights discussing plans for the future flooding his mind, he pressed forward. "As long as I stand, you won't touch this land." His words ignited a strength he didn't know he possessed. Behind him lay the memories of his family, the quiet dinners, and his son, who now had taken a few steps forward, watching with wide eyes. Feeling the weight of their fearful glares, the marauders charged again, but this time they weren't just attacking a farmer. They were challenging the heart of a man who had vowed to protect what he loved, a heart forged through hardship, hands weathered from years of labor. In that frenzied clash, he became the embodiment of every underdog story ever told. The pitchfork swept through the air, meeting metal with unforgiving fury. A blade sliced through the wind but missed its mark as the farmer ducked low. He used his weight to flip, using momentum against his opponent, sending them sprawling into the dirt. The tide turned irrevocably. Panic ignited in the marauders' eyes. This wasn't the easy grab they had envisioned. It was a test, a battle of wills, and slowly their resolve crumbled. One by one, they began to withdraw, retreating toward the woods from which they'd come. The leader spat, scrambling to regain control. "We'll come back." But the fire had ignited something deeper in the farmer. He was not about to let fear dictate the narrative of this day. He shouted, voice strong, resonating through the realm of silence that had fallen like a blanket over the field. The marauders, their confidence shattered, fled with anxious breaths, the echoes of their retreat mingling heavily with the stillness of the evening air. As the last shadow flickered and disappeared into the foliage, the farmer finally dropped to his knees, chest heaving, heart pounding with a mixture of adrenaline and disbelief. He had stood firm against the storm, against the chaos, anchored by a conviction that ran deeper than fear. The weight of countless moments woven into the fabric of his being had fueled a fire he would never forget. The first stars twinkled in the night sky as his son ran to him, full of awe and pride. "Dad, you did it." The boy's eyes shone with something more wonder and a newfound respect. The farmer ruffled his son's hair, glancing over the still-standing fields, feeling the cool earth beneath him. "We fought together, son." As the shadows grew longer in the crickets' chorus, he felt a shift in their reality. Together, they stood amidst the remnants of a battle fought not just with weapons, but with an unyielding spirit. The crops around them swayed gently, as if whispering secrets of resilience. In that moment, the farmer realized this was more than just a standoff with marauders. It was a lesson in courage, a reflection of the power that lies in the heart of a true guardian. Those marauders had thought they would take what was easy, but they had underestimated the farmer, the fire in his belly, the unrelenting force of love and duty that drove him. The sun slipped behind the horizon, leaving traces of twilight, but even as darkness fell, the farmer knew that together, they had carved out a light that would never fade. They had turned fear into courage, helplessness into strength, and stood tall in the face of adversity. And he would teach his son that as long as they stood together, united against whatever came their way, there would never be a night dark enough to extinguish their hope. The land was theirs, and from this day forward they would nurture it, protect it, and fight for it together, always united against the storm. The sun hung low, casting long shadows over the fields, when the earth trembled beneath the heavy boots of marauders advancing from the dense thicket bordering the farm. Laughter echoed, cruel and mocking, a sound intended to instill fear. The farmer paused, wiping sweat from his brow, his heart racing like a hammer against an anvil. He had heard the tales. The marauders were as ruthless as they were brazen, a band of thieves known for plundering anyone who crossed their path. But today they had come to his land. "Look at this place," the leader sneered, a man with a scar running down his cheek, his eyes glinting with malice. Simple work for simple folk. The farmer's mind raced as he took stock of the situation, feeling the weight of every crop he had nurtured. To him, this land was not just soil. It was part of his heritage, the lifeblood of his family. It was his father's hands that had tilled these fields, his mother's laughter that had echoed across the very same rows of corn. "You won't take a single ear from me," he replied, his voice a steady rumble, filled with the strength of generations before him. The marauders looked at one another, surprise flickering across their faces. They were used to weak farmers, trembling at the mere sight of them. But this man, he stood like an oak tree, grounded and unyielding. The leader scoffed, striding closer, his crew fanning out behind him like a pack of wolves. "I've done it all my life," the farmer shot back, tightening his grip on the pitchfork he had just set aside. With each heartbeat, his adrenaline surged, fueling the fire inside him. This wasn't just about crops, this was about everything he held dear. The ground beneath him seemed to hum, the very essence of centuries of toil and sweat pushing him to take a stand. As the marauders approached, a primal fight-or-flight instinct kicked in. But there would be no flight today. In a sudden burst of movement, the leader lunged forward, swinging a crude sword. The farmer sidestepped, pivoting on his heel. Time slowed as he thrust the pitchfork forward, catching the marauder off guard. It connected solidly, the man stumbling back in shock, dropping his weapon. Gasps filled the air as the others hesitated. This was not the easy score they had expected. The farmer felt the tide shift, the energy in the air electric, revitalizing him. He stood firm, eyes blazing, knowing he was fighting for more than just a season's harvest. He was defending his home. The leader barked, scrambling to regain control. But the strength of the unity this farmer felt with the land surged through him like lightning. Each swing of his pitchfork was not just emotion, it was a declaration, the kind that echoes through time. Another marauder rushed in, wielding a heavy club. The farmer ducked low and used his foot to trip the attacker, sending him sprawling to the dirt. He felt powerful, the earth and sky aligning around him as shadows danced under the fading sun. The marauders regrouped, uncertainty creeping in. The leader's anger morphed into something deeper: fear. "You're just one man," he growled, desperation seeping into his voice. But that statement sent a fire blazing through the farmer. "You don't know me," he replied, voice steady, resonating against the backdrop of the evening. Every moment of hard work, every early morning he had toiled under the sun, every late-night harvest under the stars flooded through him like an unseen army, infusing him with strength. With each passing second, the confidence of the marauders continued to falter. They hadn't come against a feeble farmer. They had tangled with a guardian, a defender of the land. Emboldened, the farmer pushed forward, swinging low to catch another attacker off balance. He felt the rush of battle awaken his senses in ways that had lain dormant for too long. He was fighting not just for survival, but for legacy, for the laughter of children to fill the air instead of screams. The leader shouted, realizing their bravado had disintegrated, but it was too late. The marauders hesitated, unsure whether to press on or flee. Like a wild beast, the farmer continued his advance, fueled by righteous fury. The clatter of weapons striking the ground mixed with the shouts of desperation from the marauders. One stumbled backward, and another fell in the chaos, struck by the fury of the lone man standing against them. Each movement the farmer made became a clear declaration of resistance. He refused to be pushed around any longer. He roared, his voice rising above the cacophony, echoing through the fields that had once been silent. The marauders, once confident in their numbers, now appeared like leaves caught in a storm. With every attack thwarted, every marauder pushed back, they slowly retreated, their bravado evaporating. The leader scrambled to his feet, fury mingling with fear. He shouted, backup echoing in the woods. The farmer replied, unyielding. He could see the daylight dwindling, casting long shadows that mirrored his fierce determination. The marauders finally turned and fled, a pack of frightened animals scurrying back into the depths of the forest, leaving the farmer with nothing but silence and the fading light of dusk. As calm settled over the field, he dropped to his knees, heart racing, breath coming in deep gulps. The adrenaline began to ebb, and he realized the magnitude of what had just happened. He had fought off a band of marauders. He had stood tall against fear and won. The ground beneath him felt like it awakened. The crops rustled in the breeze, the air fragrant with the remnants of a day well spent. He could hardly believe it himself. Every fiber of his being vibrated with accomplishment and pride. "I did it," he whispered, looking out over the land that had always been there for him. Soon, the sound of hurried footsteps filled the air as his son rushed from the barn, eyes wide with worry. "Dad, I saw them coming." The boy panted, the fear evident in his voice, quickly transforming into awe as he took in the scene, his father standing victorious. "I'm all right, son," the farmer replied, a smile breaking through the tension. He reached out, pulling his son into a solid embrace. The shadows around them began to stretch into darkness, but the farmer knew that this day would resonate within him, and within the community he had built. He would tell the story, share the lessons learned. The land would always need guardians, and today he had proven himself to be one. "Remember this, son," he said softly, looking down at the boy in his arms. "When the world pushes back, you stand your ground." His son nodded. Understanding began to blossom in his eyes, the kind of understanding that only comes from facing challenges together. The farmer felt a sense of relief wash over him, knowing that they had not just warded off danger but had forged a bond strengthened by fire. "Let's go back to the house," he said, ruffling the boy's hair as they walked back together. As they walked, the stars began to flicker in the deepening night sky, casting a gentle glow over the fields. The farmer inhaled deeply, feeling the weight of his victory. This wasn't just about keeping marauders at bay. It was about continuing a legacy, nourishing dreams, and ensuring a future free from fear. Tomorrow, he would rise again with the sun, tending to the land. He knew that threats could arise again, but it was the love for his family, the tender bond between them that held the true power, and they would face anything together. The night settled around them like a warm blanket, whispering secrets and promises. The farmer glanced up at the twinkling stars and felt an overwhelming sense of peace. They had defended their land, reclaimed their right to live freely, and through it all, he had discovered a deeper strength within himself. In the heart of the darkness, as the moon crowned the sky, the farmer knew that they would never stand alone. Tomorrow would usher in new challenges, but with love, courage, and an unwavering spirit, they would always fight back together. The warmth of the home awaited them as they stepped inside, a sanctuary built on dreams, courage, and unyielding resolve. Together, they would redefine what it meant to protect, to nurture, and above all, to fight for what truly mattered. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of crimson and gold as a stillness settled over the fields. At the edge of a vast grain patch, a farmer wiped his brow, the weight of the day heavy on his shoulders. The pleasant aroma of freshly tilled earth lingered in the air, mingling with the songs of crickets welcoming the night. Yet deep in the woods bordering his land, shadows began to stir, and with them came a sense of foreboding. A rustle broke the quiet, growing louder, and the farmer's instincts kicked in. Anxiety wove through him as he turned just in time to see a group of marauders emerge, their laughter slicing through the evening air like a knife. The band of men, roughened by countless scrapes and scars, marched forward with an arrogance that ignited a flicker of fear in his heart. "Look at this place," the leader barked, a hulking figure with a jagged scar running down his cheek. "Easy pickings." The farmer's gut tensed. It should have been easy for them. They thought they could stroll in, take what they wanted, and walk away without a hint of remorse. But beneath the surface of his calm demeanor, buried deep within, lay something primal and fierce. Memories of long days spent in the fields shaped his resolve. This land was his, the culmination of generations of his family's hard work. "No," he said firmly, his voice steadier than he felt. The marauders exchanged glances, surprise momentarily flickering across their faces. They were used to farmers cowering in fear, not standing their ground. The leader took a step closer, towering over him. "You're just one man." Adrenaline surged through the farmer, his grip tightening around the pitchfork he had left nearby. "You have no idea what I'm capable of," he warned, the fire in his heart awakening, igniting a sense of protective fury. Every seed he'd planted, every crop he'd nurtured pulsed through his veins. With that, the marauders charged in a wild frenzy, but the farmer was ready. He felt something shift in the air as he braced himself, heart pounding like a drum. The first man reached him, swinging a crude weapon. With a quick, instinctual thrust, the farmer sent his pitchfork crashing against the incoming blade, deflecting it away. The marauder stumbled back, disbelief etched across his face. Air crackled with energy. The farmer felt the weight of the world on his shoulders, and yet he was lighter than he had ever been. Each thrust of the pitchfork became a statement. This was not just about the fight, it was about everything he held dear. In the distance, the sun sank further, casting vivid hues of orange against the rapidly darkening sky, a stark contrast to the chaos unfolding. The marauders hesitated. They had come expecting an easy conquest, but now faced an indomitable spirit. The leader shouted, fury flaring as he regrouped his men, but the fear had begun to seep into their bravado. Another marauder lunged forward, but again, the farmer sidestepped and struck, using the familiar weight of his pitchfork to gain the upper hand. It was no longer a simple tool. It became a symbol of resistance, a weapon forged in the heart of a man willing to defend everything he loved. He ducked low as a weapon swung past him, narrowly avoiding disaster, then pivoted and struck the marauder with force. They hadn't anticipated this kind of fight. The leader barked, but desperation began to taint his commands. The marauders tried to rally, but something shifted in their eyes. They were no longer aggressive, they were panicked, uncertain. The farmer shouted, voice ringing out across the field, "I am the soil beneath your feet." His resolve grew louder than their laughter, echoing into the night. The leader realized then that their bravado had crumbled. With momentum shifting, the marauders faltered, and before they could recover, the farmer stepped into the fray, empowered. He swung the pitchfork wide, the metal glinting in the dimming light, and caught another marauder in the gut, sending him bowling over. Fear coursed through the group like wildfire, and one by one, they began to retreat. The leader yelled, scrambling to escape the wrath of the lone soldier fighting for everything he held dear. They dashed back towards the woods in a flurry of limbs and panic. The farmer panted heavily, adrenaline still racing through his veins, the echoes of battle fading into the evening air. Victory overwhelmed him, but he stood there, pitchfork firmly planted in the dirt, watching the marauders vanish into the trees. As the last shadow slipped away, he felt his breath steady, the weight of survival resting lightly upon him. In the distance, he heard a familiar voice calling out, his young son racing toward him, eyes wide with concern. "Dad." His son's breath came in short gasps, panic evident on his face. "I'm fine, son," the farmer said, kneeling to embrace the boy, relief flooding over him. The boy looked up, a mix of awe and admiration filling his gaze. "You fought them off." The farmer chuckled, ruffled the boy's hair. "It was nothing you wouldn't do yourself," he said, feeling gratitude swell within him. As the sun finally slipped below the horizon, the stars began to sprinkle across the sky. The farmer took a deep breath, tasting the sweet scent of fresh earth, the whispers of the fields comforting and reassuring. Together, they walked back towards the barn, the cool night air embracing them like a soft blanket. Once inside, he looked into his son's eager eyes. "Listen to me," he began, his voice low and steady. "You saw what happened today. It's important to understand that sometimes, when faced with fear, we have to stand tall. This land is our life, our history." As the weight of his words sank in, the boy nodded, understanding blooming within him. "I will, Dad." The farmer smiled, pride swelling in his chest. Moments like this, brewing a bond over courage, were what he yearned to cultivate just as he tended to his crops. Days turned into weeks, and though the memory of that fateful evening lingered, life returned to a semblance of normalcy. The fields flourished, shimmering gold under the sun's warm embrace. The farmer kept watch, expecting that the marauders might attempt to return, but their boldness was squashed by the reminder of defeat. Each morning, he rose early, greeted by the soft melodies of birds and the first light illuminating the land. He instilled in his son the importance of vigilance and bravery, recounting stories of their ancestors who had once fought their own battles, not just against other men but against the odds of nature, against every harsh drought and storm that threatened to wash away their lives. He pointed one morning, his finger tracing the outline of a gnarled oak standing proudly on the edge of their land. That tree withstood storms, droughts, and all the seasons. Just like it, we bend but don't break. His son looked at the tree, imagination filling his mind with visions of strength and history. "It looks like it's been through a lot," he said, his young voice filled with wonder. "Exactly," the farmer replied, "and that's what makes it beautiful, just like our home." The boy bounded through the grass, joy unfurling in his heart as he played among the fields, laughter bubbling from his lips. The farmer watched him, joy in his heart, but also something more, a commitment to ensuring that his family would never have to live in fear. One crisp afternoon, as the sun settled behind the horizon casting long shadows, a familiar rustle echoed through the woods. The farmer's heart dropped. The marauders were back. Clenching his jaw, he felt the fire rise within him again, but this time he had his son at his side. The boy's eyes widened, fear creeping in, but the farmer put a steadying hand on his shoulder. "Stay close." They watched as the figures emerged, but this time the marauders appeared more hesitant, the wild laughter replaced with cautious uncertainty. The leader, now bruised from their previous encounter, hesitated at the edge of the clearing. "We're back for what's ours," he blustered, trying to regain control of the moment. But the farmer stood tall, the sun casting a fierce light over him. "It's not yours and you will not take it," he replied, voice steady as rock. The marauders glanced at each other, their hesitation palpable. The sight of the farmer, resolute, was a stark contrast to the chaos they tried to exude. Sensing the shift in their confidence, the farmer felt armed not just with his pitchfork, but with the knowledge that he had faced them before, shoulder to shoulder with his son. "Leave now, and I will not end this fight," the farmer declared, not just for himself but for the larger truth behind every guardian's journey. The land belonged to those who fought for it, and he was willing to rise for what he loved. In that moment, the reality sunk in for the marauders. They had come seeking easy prey, but standing before them now was not just the farmer. They were facing a father, their worst nightmare. The children of the fields, woven together in bravery, stood without fear. With grim expressions, the marauders took a step back, retreating into the shadows once more. The sound of their footsteps faded, eclipsed by the calm that washed over the land like a gentle rain. The farmer turned to his son, relief mingling with pride. "You see, standing together makes us strong." "I'm so proud of you, Dad," the boy beamed, eyes twinkling with admiration. "And you," he replied, pulling him close. "We fight together for each other, for our home." The stars began to shimmer, blanketing the night sky, echoing the whispers of courage passed through generations. Together, they stood united against the storm, knowing that they were more than just a farmer and his son, they were warriors of their land. It was a promise woven into the fabric of their story, a lesson that would echo down through the ages. They had not just expected trouble, they had transformed it into their resolve, and as long as they stood together, they would always rise to meet any challenge. And in that embrace, beneath the boundless sky, they understood, no marauder would ever think it would be easy again. Every farmer knows the changing seasons, but few ever expect the storm to come in the form of marauders. The sun had hung low in the sky, bathing the fields in a warm, golden glow. A gentle breeze whispered through the crops, rustling the leaves, creating a soft symphony of nature. But today, the farmer felt something ominous lurking just beyond sight, a tension vibrating in the air like a plucked string. As he worked, the rhythmic sound of his hoe cutting through the earth was interrupted by an unexpected noise of commotion in the distance. He froze. A knot of fear twisted in his gut. The quiet of his land had been shattered by the rough laughter of men. Straining to listen, he squinted toward the edge of the woods lining his property. What emerged from the shadows was a ragtag band of marauders, clad in tattered clothing, their eyes gleaming with greed. They swaggered towards him, their laughter mingling with the crunch of leaves beneath heavy boots. The largest one sneered, his voice dripping with scorn. The farmer felt his heart race. He had heard stories of men like these who roamed the land, emptying fields and filling their pockets, leaving nothing but despair in their wake. But he also knew the land would not defend itself. It had given him everything, and today he would protect it. "Not today," he responded, his voice steady, belying the whirlwind brewing in his chest. The marauders stopped short, disbelief crossing their faces. Nobody had ever stood up to them like this, and their bravado wavered for just a moment. The leader, with his wild hair and scarred face, looked at his companions and then back at the farmer. Laughed, but there was a hint of uncertainty in his eyes. They had expected a meek farmer full of fear. What they got was a man with the fury of a lion behind him, the steely resolve of a guardian. The leader waved a hand dismissively. "Let's show him how brave he is," he shouted, and like a wave crashing down on the shore, the marauders surged forward, weapons drawn. The farmer's instincts kicked in. He snatched up his pitchfork, a tool meant for harvesting now transformed into a weapon of defense. He grounded himself, pushing aside thoughts of fear, focusing on the strength of the earth around him. Each blade of grass whispered encouragement, urging him to stand firm. As the first marauder lunged, swinging a makeshift club, the farmer sidestepped smoothly, the adrenaline firing through his veins like a shot of electricity. He thrust the pitchfork forward, feeling the weight lift off his shoulders as it connected solidly, sending the marauder staggering back, disbelief etched across his face. Gasps erupted from the marauders, confusion swirling in their ranks. This was not what they had braced for. This was not the submissive farmer they had anticipated. The leader hollered, unrelenting, but doubt began to pierce through their bravado. They charged again, but the farmer was ready, each swing of his pitchfork more determined than the last. With every thrust, he poured his heart into the fight, drawing strength from the land he had cultivated. Another marauder came at him, and with a swift pivot, he thrust the pitchfork low, catching the man off guard and sending him sprawling to the ground. A rush of exhilaration coursed through him, buoyed by the unexpected power of his resolve. The leader shouted, his anger turning to desperation as the tide shifted in favor of the farmer. "Perhaps not," the farmer replied, voice strong and unwavering, "but I will fight for what is mine." With the last of his strength, the marauder charged one last time, but the farmer sidestepped again and swung the pitchfork defiantly. It connected with a satisfying crack, sending the assailant crumpling to the ground. The leader roared, panic now evident in his voice. The marauders hesitated, glancing from their fallen companions back to the farmer, whose eyes blazed with a fire that matched the sun setting behind him. In that moment of uncertainty, the leader hesitated. The farmer advanced, every inch he took filled with determination and purpose. "Leave now and I won't follow you," he commanded, the authority in his voice stronger than any weapon. With fear now etched across their faces, the marauders began to retreat. Like shadows scattering at dawn, they turned and fled into the woods, the sound of their hurried footsteps a sweet victory to the farmer's ears. Relief washed over him, but along with it came a rush of disbelief. He had fought back. He had defended his land. His heart raced as adrenaline flooded his system. He dropped the pitchfork, the weight of the battle slowly dissipating into the warm evening air. Sweat dripped from his brow, but pride swelled in his chest. He had shown them that he was more than just a farmer. He was a protector. Just then, his son burst from the barn, eyes wide with a mixture of fear and awe. "Dad." The farmer knelt, gathering the boy into his arms, relief enveloping them both. "I'm fine, son. We did it together." "I was so scared," the boy admitted in a small voice, holding tight to his father. The farmer smiled, heart swelling with pride. Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's the decision to fight for what's right. With the sun now sinking below the horizon, casting long shadows across the field, the two of them stood together, breathless but victorious. The farmer knew this moment would become the foundation of a legacy, a lesson passed down like a treasured heirloom. Days turned into weeks as life returned to a semblance of normality, yet the specter of that encounter lingered. The fields thrived, vibrant and alive with the efforts of hard work, but the farmer remained vigilant. He expected trouble, for marauders do not walk away empty-handed for long. Then, on one cool autumn evening, the air thickened with tension. The farmer stood outside, fixing the fence, when he caught a glimpse of movement at the edge of the woods. Shadows danced between the trees, and his heart sank. The marauders had returned. "No," he whispered to himself, fury igniting once more. He reached for the pitchfork, a beacon of his resolve, and raised it high as the marauders approached again. Their numbers doubled this time. He shouted, voice fierce, grounding himself in his determination. "We're back for what's ours," the leader bellowed, eyes filled with both anger and a strange satisfaction. The farmer's hand tightened around the pitchfork, and as he looked at the menacing group, fear and anger battled within him. But deep down, he felt that unbreakable bond with the land, the legacy of defending it fiercely. "If you think you can just come back here and take what you want, you're mistaken," he said, confidence surging within him. One of the marauders shouted, and they surged forward, weapons drawn like a wave crashing onto the shore. But this time, the farmer stood not just for himself, but for his son and the legacy he intended to build. As they charged closer, he met them with a resolve that radiated like a fiery sun. As the first man lunged at him, the farmer pivoted, feeling every muscle spring into action. He fought like a man possessed, the rhythm of clash and clang enveloping him as he deflected blows, using every ounce of strength and skill learned over years of tilling the fields. He thrust and parried, his heart a drumbeat of defiance and tenacity. But as the throng pressed forward, he realized the odds were against him this time. The marauders flowed like water, their numbers overwhelming. Distant memories of his victory haunted him. Could he withstand this onslaught? Each strike was heavier, each breath came harder, and fatigue began to creep in. He heard his son shout from behind him. Fear laced through the boy's voice. The cry pierced the farmer's heart like an arrow. He turned, eyes widening as he saw his son standing a few feet away, uncertainty mingling with terror. The farmer shouted, eyes darting between the marauders and his child. But in that split second, everything slowed. The marauders took advantage of his distraction. An attacker lunged, swinging his weapon at the farmer, but the farmer reacted quickly, using all his might to block the blow. He felt it resonating through his arms, the jarring impact making the world spin momentarily. His son cried again, rushing forward, but two marauders spotted him. Panic rose, an icy hand squeezing around the farmer's heart. He roared, a fierce cry exploding from deep within him, but he was already locked in a battle of his own, his attention splintered. He fought with everything he had, but the marauders circled, pushing him back, and their leader moved in closer, eyes gleaming with malice. "This ends now," he hissed. With a surge of desperation, the farmer focused on his son, praying he would be far enough from danger. But just as he turned, one of the marauders lunged, and time slowed as everything came crashing down around him. The scene darkened as he felt a weight bear down on him. It became an eternal moment, a cliffhanger suspended in the air, where decisions, bravery, and love hung in the balance. Would he fight through the storm, or would this be where the legacy ended, a dream suffocated under the weight of greed? On this precipice of time, a battle raged not just for survival, but for everything a family holds dear, a desperate fight echoing through the ages, the eternal struggle between light and darkness, love and greed.